I'm going to call the strategic planning meeting for the Board of County Commissioners to order. Let the record reflect that we have Commissioner Cooney and Commissioner Kearns online with us, and that, we have got Sheriff Knisevich here to join us for just a quick second, share some information with the board. Sheriff.
Board, we're also in our strategic planning mode right now, and based on what we're seeing, it looks like we're going to have to close a patrol district in order to get staffing areas in other portions of the sheriff's office where they need to be. We can no longer afford to neglect our property crimes and our street crimes investigations. We're starting to see spikes in those areas, and we need to get them down. We're also seeing retirements. As we've talked before, we were in the baby boomers are rapidly starting to retire out, and perfect catch 22 is getting even more difficult to find candidates to do the job. We're hoping that maybe we'll be able to get some laterals from agencies that are starting to lose officers from jurisdictions that do not support their law enforcement. That's why I would also request that the board consider doing a resolution supporting the men and women out there doing the job. I think it'd go a long way in not only their morale, but also as a recruitment tool to bring people here to know that this community actually supports their law enforcement, which I think that this community does very much so. I think there's a lot of people misreading the political winds right now, especially here locally, and that's where we're at. But I just need to give you a heads up. That district that we're looking at happens to be the Otis Orchards area. So we're going to try to figure out how we, make sure that we have coverage, but it's not going to be the same coverage as we had. To make it very clear, we have shut that district down about 4 or 5 times over the last probably 6 years intermittently because of manpower issues. This time, we don't have a choice. We are going to have to do that, and it looks like it will be on a more permanent basis until we either get more manpower, through solid funding, or we're at a point where we have an extra car, we'll fill that district. So we'll keep you apprised as to how our strategic planning is going, what that actually looks like, how we're going to make it all work, and that should be around the 1st of August. And that's all I have.
Any questions for the sheriff?
Of the districts, is that the area that has the lowest crime rate? Is that what's helped drive? Was that part of the equation to pick that location?
It's part of the equation, but not all the equation. The other part of the equation is that we have Liberty Lake and we have the Valley that if we get in major problems out there, we can pull other resources from. The other district would be District 15, which is the Elk area. We have nothing to pull from up there. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at where we can actually, maintain coverage, but if we have an emergency, be able to pull in from other jurisdictions to help to carry the problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ozzy. Okay, next item on the agenda is Capital Facilities Plan findings and discussion. Even better.
Morning, board, or good afternoon, board members. Today is the date which you set to consider deciding the findings of fact on the resolution for the comprehensive plan update for the 2017 to 2037 planning period. It also includes an update to the capital facilities plan and some minor revisions to development regulations go along with the changes to the comprehensive plan text and the capital facilities plan. The resolution, which we sent over to you, also would resolve upon your signature and subsequent actions by Mr. Catt. The pending cases before the growth management hearings for the date from 2015, and also the settlement agreement from 2016. Just kind of a highlight, the actions taken by county to address the settlement agreement are on page 3 of the document. The capital facilities plan is a component of the document. It's gone through the SEPA process. The public participation process is extensive, and that's on page 8 of the document itself. We have received the certification of the plans from SRTC, and that was what held up the Planning Commission's decision to some degree. The Planning Commission heard this in December of 2019. They did recommend unanimous approval with some minor revisions, which you folks were briefed on in February. The Planning Commission findings were signed on January 13th, and you received these on February 11th. You considered them on February 18th, and then from then we've been working on getting all the package together. And at that time, on your February 18th public hearing, you voted to approve these unanimously upon these signings that other than a public meeting or public hearing. Public meeting is fine. That's why we're here today. So this would be the culmination of all these things we've been addressing over time. Get the UGA addressed, the capital facilities plan updated, so the folks in public works can receive grants and we can get ourselves into compliance. Dan Cat is also on the line, and Dan could then describe the next steps. We would take this resolution and attachments to the Growth Management Hearings Board to get them to lift our orders of validity. Dan could describe that procedural process if he's on the phone with us.
Go ahead, Dan.
The next step is that send a copy of the resolution to the members of the mediation group and see if they, along with proposed copies of dismissal, and see if they sign off on them. Meanwhile, we're under a schedule and we will prepare for a hearing at the Growth Management Hearing Board if they elect that they don't want to sign off on it. We're working on dates. We had to reschedule some dates to meet with them to look at amending the settlement agreement to reflect what has occurred and to address issues on Geiger Spur. And I believe John referenced, but I'm not positive, this recognizes that Geiger Spur remains at the status of review. It's not resolved yet, but it doesn't go back to start all over again.
Does not.
Okay.
Questions?
Any questions for Dan or John? So those projects that we're waiting to for us to adapt the capital facilities plan so that they could go ahead and submit and get vested and stuff. Does this then trigger that event so that they can submit and get their projects vested to move forward, or are they still in limbo?
Dan, would this basically say that we're done and that unless otherwise ordered, we are valid, correct?
This says that this completes the update process and that we're through with that. The board's determination of invalidity is tied to the underlying cases. So until those underlying cases are dismissed, arguably the order is still in place, but our compliance aspects are done with those underlying cases. So I'm not sure whether or not, I know that the burden's on us, but I think we met the burden. I can't really tell you what the status is going to be or what position the growth board's going to take on that.
So Dan, in the case of a particular spot, could they come in and apply for their building permit now that this would put that property inside the UGA?
I think they can apply for the building permit. I would work with them with a caveat in there that we have adopted the capital facilities update. We've adopted an updated comprehensive plan. We believe that that's a basis for them to move forward with their application. Hopefully we'll have the orders in place prior to the issuance of the permit. That's all I can tell you. I mean, there's nothing else for us to do that I'm aware of.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
We will do it today.
All right, very good.
So are we done as far as action that we have to take on this though? Or is there
Yes.
some final action at the end once everyone else signs off? No,
This would
so-
be this would be your final action, unless someone, takes this and decides to appeal us.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
That's always a possibility, but it doesn't act as a stay.
Okay.
And then Dan has the final action with the hearings board, it doesn't involve you folks, so hopefully this will be the last time you have to see this for a while, if ever. Again,
Okay. Very good.
please, hopefully.
Okay, thanks, John.
All right, so Gina has the final paper versions for you to sign up and all that. We'll get her.
And he signed it already, and I'm just waiting for two other things.
Outstanding, thank you very much, I'll get out of your hair. Never
Great.
go past the close, it's
Okay,
always good.
next, John Dixon.
Yeah, just have a brief update on our mental health crisis stabilization facility. And Gina, could you bring up that one pager?
Yeah,
Essentially, I'll just kind of a brief outline of what I want to cover. The first thing is Pioneer Human Services, their existing contract does end on June 30th. So they are in the process of working with us on this next extension, which would go through June 30th of next year, which by that time we should be, if all goes to plan, operational. So just some of the highlights that we're working on right now, where we're at is the contract's going to be a little under 400,000 as currently drafted. The biggest change though is at the funding source. The funding source up until now has been through a Department of Commerce grant, which does expire, Carrie, and just confirm at the end, June 30th of this year.
Correct.
So,
For this part.
correct. So when this contract will come in front of you, the current plan is with 1/10 of 1% mental health sales tax money. Now, another attachment, and Al, you can turn that around on the back. Just checked with our budget department. Could you go to page 2? It asks Downs just to take a look, and if you turn your head 90 degrees, look, we have set aside about a little over 1.5 million of 1/10 of 1%. My point is that if there's funding available at that $372,000 amount to cover if we should go forward and approve this portion of the contract. Any questions right here with this mental health sales tax summary? And that's set aside both in 18 and 19?
No.
Okay, just wanted to show you that the funding is there. Yes. Okay, when we go back to the page 1, Ron. So Pioneer's still working on their version of it. They haven't even signed it yet. So I can see in a couple of weeks at the earliest, we might be bringing this to you commissioners for consideration of this next phase with Pioneer. The second and third bullets are just kind of in preparation for the fourth bullet that I want to talk to you about. Just as a quick summary on
Hey,
the,
John, before you go,
please.
can I ask a couple questions?
Good.
So I guess, Carrie, just talk me through, because I thought that all this was initially covered by Department of Commerce funds. So why now, was that part of what happened in the law this last year, or this year that kind of got things screwed up?
Carrie?
What's that? I'm sorry. I was reading something, Commissioner, I'm sorry. Or I was sleeping, sitting up. I'm not sure. Sorry.
Jerry has that effect on people, so don't worry.
Oh, nice shot, Mary.
Very nice,
Wow.
Mary. Thank you.
Wow.
That
I
was
like
good.
that.
So part of it, so I thought that the initial Pioneer contracts with them was covered through the Department of Commerce grants. So is this part of what got screwed up in the legislature this last year? Because I know that there was some stuff that, they monkeyed around with, and so I'm just wondering if this was part of that.
So the diversion funding that initially paid for this first year, that was the DOC money and the DOC grant. And what Commerce did, because we didn't go immediately into services right away, they agreed to pay for a portion of our, like our architectural design work. It was like 300 and some thousand. And then they agreed to also pay for Pioneer's contract until June 30th for creating the policies and procedures and doing further work. But they were very clear that as of July 1st, they were not funding any non-service type of services at that point. So July 1st, meaning, next week, you could not continue to support any of the efforts of Pioneer to continue this on unless they were actually providing services. So that's what the discussion was on the 760,000 that Gil was presenting a week ago. It's that money that he was referring to. So we have about $760,000 that has to go to services that has to be expended by June 30th of 2021.
Of next year. Okay. And so and can we go back up to that, Ron? Thank you. So with that, so for the $372,000, since we don't have services in place yet, what is that contract providing? I mean, I guess it's
Mainly, it's Dan Sigler's time. It's Sapir Consulting, the project management times. And if you look towards the bottom on the hiring of the key staff, we've been working with Pioneer on when to bring some of the personnel that they've identified. They've had a list of 12 or 13 different types, but we said in this contract, who are the key folks at T-minus 4 to 5 months, which would put this about in the January, February timeframe next year. And you can see those individuals, management level, the director 3, the mental health clinical supervisor, the nursing supervisor, the residential treatment specialist manager, and the SUD clinical supervisor. So part of this 372,000 goes towards them.
okay. So then this contract is then for the rest of, until June 30, 2021, when we would be able to react the cost or the Department of Commerce dollars. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. The next couple items is just kind of a preview to lead into the fourth item. So we just found out about late last week. Number 2 here, the construction-based bids. This is just a summary of what we've been through from mid-March, where we were at that 6.785 million. What we've gone through the last few weeks with Gil and company is looking at some of these different alternates that we could remove. And on June 12th, there was 5 alternates we took out to get us down to 6.3. And what you all approved last week got us down with alternates 6 through 15 to 5.15 million as a base construction bid that we'll be getting to the city for permitting. Item 3, I'm just doing simple math, is the delta then to the estimate that we have for this facility. It started at 2.23 million was that gap up until a few weeks ago. Now it's down to about 654. Got a conversation last Thursday or Friday with the Maceo, who had heard from the city through Mike Ormsby and Tanya Wallace. And this is item 4 now. As we're working back and forth on an interlocal agreement with them per your direction, apparently they're putting a proposal forward to their council this week where they would want to see if they could pick up that entire $2.23 million. That includes all the, what we are calling those alternatives, the whole thing. That would be their proposal back to us. We'll front that entire 2.23 million. But the condition, if we do that, and this is obviously up to the city council's approval, is that the main players like us, the city of Spokane Valley, over 5 years from then would pay back the city of Spokane for our prorated amount. We're like at 15% of that. And the capital surcharge could be paid up front. Since I heard that, I think they're taking this to their council this week, I just wanted y'all to know about what I've heard. And maybe y'all got some comments on this proposal from the city of Spokane, which we have not received yet.
Thoughts?
It's news to me. I haven't heard any word about them running that by their council this year. So this week. So I don't know.
This happened like last Friday, so just didn't want y'all to get surprised by this.
Well, I find it interesting that the city's, basically saying, oh, well, we want all these alternatives, so we're going to pay for it, but then you have to pay us back on a percentage basis, which, again, we were all like trying to figure out how we could cut those costs so we weren't spending as much. I think it's just one more way to, I don't know.
They're very motivated, have been very motivated from the start.
Well, because it provides additional homeless beds, because basically, if we're in the the one side that I can't think of the name of it right now.
What's the term they use for the side that we took out as an alternative?
Diversion.
Diversion.
Yes. So if you're sitting there, you're sitting there because you're homeless. Because there's not a bed for you to go to, that you feel safe in your home, or there's no treatment facility to go to. But we're supposed to be doing our own treatment facility.
Is it diversion or transition?
It's a holdover beds.
Okay.
I think that's what they termed it, was holdover. So it's, when I looked in Seattle, that's basically what it is, because a lot of the people that are coming into this facility are homeless. Instead of putting them in jail, we're trying to get them services and all of that. Not all, but some. And so then they have this holdover facility, which when Aaron was there, said, when they saw Seattle's, they liked that as well, or King counties. So it's just another way to provide homeless beds. Just putting that out there, whether it's, just so we know that that's, it's again, that holdover transition to get them into other facilities. So I know in King County, when I was there, it's supposed to be like a 15-day, 14-day, set up. Some people were there longer, some people were shorter, just based on things, but that's where it's like, we would have to see, that's where they're saying Pioneer says they're going to get funding for that they can bill for that. I'm still curious who they can bill for to get that funding. So it's not just us paying for people to stay there.
So even if they vote to approve it, does it mean that we have to take it?
Nope.
Oh, no.
No.
We can still keep the budget at the lower level where we're only short 654,000 and fund that and still move forward with the project. And then if they want to come back in later on and finish out the rest of it, then they can do it 100% on their nickel.
Yeah, because I think the Valley would have a hard time. Again, this is kind of one of those less than transparent situations that, should have came and had this discussion so we could, talk about it, because, we can still go, there's time. Yeah, I agree. We don't have good.
Commissioner French, your direction to us was to go with that 5.1 million. We're working with NAC right now to make sure that those are the drawings that go to the city for permitting. That is where we're at officially per your direction.
Okay.
I just didn't want you to get too surprised by something I just heard last Friday.
So John, are they voting on this today, or is this just like being presented to them in a work session today?
I don't know. I heard presented, but
Okay.
Probably in a work session.
yeah, that's what I heard.
They're using their study session for it probably.
Yeah, the devil's always in the details on something like this.
Yeah. But we're still going forth with the 5.1 construction-based bid.
Okay,
That's it?
all right, very good. No action for us to take?
Nope.
Excellent. Then, Mr. Gimmel, going on a charter cruise.
Hey,
A regional charter cruise.
3-hour tour?
Is Arian on the,
Arian's on vacation.
Arian's going this week.
so I'm
Can I
gonna pitch
just
it all by
update
myself.
them briefly before
Yes,
I
you
run out?
sure can.
Commissioners, I just wanted to brief you up, update you briefly. I sent Gina a little short document that she'll be sharing with you about what we've spent, just kind of a running total that we'll be presenting you to probably on a weekly basis so you can see how much money is being spent. But I did go back and look, and thus far to June 15th, only 7 laptop computers have been charged to the COVID expense account across the county. So I just wanted you to be aware there's been very little purchase with regards to that. We've purchased thus far as of June 15th about 1.3 million. That includes a substantial amount, probably around 700,000 if I'm not mistaken, of that 1.3 was associated with the EOC costs. So it really, overall county-wise for masks, PPE, a lot of people have been buying masks and PPE and sanitation. So I think they've had access to it. So that's kind of in response to Commissioner Cuny. I don't know why it was included today because a lot has been purchased thus far for a lot of the departments. But as far as computers, no. Been about total 38,000 that we pulled out that were related to webcams, to Zoom, subscriptions, that kind of stuff. So 38,000 since the very beginning of this until June 15th. And that included the 7 laptops. So we were able to make that determination. So just wanted to update you on that.
But we have purchased a lot more laptops than that, though. We just obviously purchased them with some other money, right? Because I've been hearing for the last several months that we bought a bunch of laptops.
I haven't, I don't know if that's IT. It hasn't been coded to CARES money or the CARE code because all departments are showing that have been 7 total that have been ESUP to COVID. So laptops were purchased, they were purchased in their budget and not related to the COVID response. Or if they are, they're not recording them. So that might be a good follow-up to find out from Patrick and Becky tomorrow.
Okay.
Because they're not showing up as COVID expenses.
Debbie Kerbids recently had a fairly large
15.
ask, but
Yeah.
that was related to COVID.
Yeah, and we actually took a vote to authorize those expenditures.
Correct.
But we could certainly reach out to Becky or someone over at IT and ask them, how many laptops have been purchased, how many have been purchased. We have 7 that we think have been purchased because of the COVID plus 15 for Debbie. And are there any others that were purchased that we don't know about?
I can send Pat a follow-up email this afternoon. Becky's on vacation this week. She is calling in tomorrow for the presentation because they're before you, I think about 10 tomorrow. Is that right? Somewhere.
They're on tomorrow at?
I think it's about 10 o'clock. So they have all that information as I indicated this morning, but I just kind of wanted to bring you up to speed. But I will present that to Pat as well and find out if, he has that question answered when he comes in before you guys tomorrow as well. What's been purchased, because I'm not showing anything coming up COVID other than 7.
Because I do know there was,
Oh, sorry. I'm with Josh that, I've heard of, how do we have 600 people working from home? They didn't all have laptops, and if they're going to, if they're personal, we should be providing laptops through this. So, yeah.
Well, Commissioner, most people I know, the departments didn't provide them because it was such a quick turnout. I've been using my own personal, so are all my staff. Most people I know that have been using their own personal equipment at home.
I re-
Because it was such a, and nobody could get computers. I
Well,
mean,
we spent a lot of time trying to update the system to handle
Right,
those. The other one, if you remember, commissioners, that
right.
there was an ask about folks that said, can I, even though it's county property, can I take my monitor home with me?
Mhm.
Because I'm used to having the 2 monitors. And, even though it's not my property, can I, and we told them, sure, if it was okay with your department, you could take your monitor home with you. And some of them might have taken 2 monitors, I don't know. But we'll find out. It's not, that will be hard to find out.
So I just kind of wanted to update everybody on the question of what had been purchased thus far.
Okay,
Okay, sorry for.
Thank you.
any other questions for Jerry?
I know, I'm not sorry. I see
You're not
the
sorry at
front
all.
page. I know.
You're gonna do the regional project charter?
I guess so.
Sure, why not?
Mary will help me with the regional project charter, seeing how it came out of our meeting. You want me to go ahead, Mary?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I think, this is what all of you started and then I took over.
This is the group that Al started with, and then Mary, 2 meetings? You're about 2 meetings into it?
Yeah, I just attended 2.
Yeah, so this started out as part of the regular monthly meetings that Jerry and I were having with the mayor. And then it was her idea to go down this trail with regard to the transition center. And so, but she wanted to take it out of the regional governance structure and just have it be, a couple selected electeds. And then when we had one meeting, that was with Ben Wick and the folks with the Valley.
Out of the valley?
And when I realized that it was going to be more in your district, Mary, then I thought that this really should have Mary here as part of this conversation than me. And so that's when I bowed out and then it's yours. So that's kind of the history of how we got to where we're at. So it wasn't anything more nefarious than that.
Oh, no, I agree. And yes, I've only attended 2 meetings, so this is in the works for a little while.
So we've got the group that been meeting is Mayor Nadine, Wes, Mayor Wick, John Holman, in place of Mark, I think, because Mark's social security, Mary, myself, and then Arian. Arian kind of being the facilitator project. Well, in this case, we wanted to have her be the project manager. So,
And Brian.
Brian from the city councils there. So we've got, here's where we left off. We've got a project charter to go ahead with this process. The Salvation Army has been selected as a provider of services for the regional bridge housing. They want to call it bridge housing. They like that term better than transitional. But basically what it says is you've got out of these groups of homeless folks, there's a segment of that population that's ready to make some significant changes instead of night by night by night. If they could have 30, 60, 90 days to kind of get their life in order, then they would be assessed, to be good candidates. This center would be where you go to get out of that cycle of street one night, shelter one night, street one night, to improve your lot. As of last meeting, or as of today, I don't believe they found a facility yet. There's a number of, what were there, Mary? There was like a dozen or maybe 10.
Yeah, they had a group that was going to go look at different facilities. So, because we basically determined until we know where this shelter is located and what it is, how big it is, you don't know what your costs are. You don't know any of those things. And we don't know whose jurisdictions it is in for permitting, whatever the zoning is for it. So we determined that, that's the next step, was to figure out where to locate it. I think, so there was someone from the Salvation Army, Tim Crowley, someone from the city, someone from the city of Spokane Valley. I think they were all going and looking with the realtor at the different locations that they had identified. And so we're hoping this week they'll come back to us with, either their top one or top several I think the city was wanting it in the valley, thinking their zoning codes were going to be easier, and not sure that that's true. So again, that's why we just need to figure out where they're really talking about to know what we've got to deal with on zoning and size. They say that they're looking for about 60 people to be in this shelter, and it's by referral only. I mean, it's all been changing just in the 2 weeks that I've been part of these meetings, but it's now referral only. So it's not a drop-in, shelter at all. It's a continuous stay. So I don't know. So it's not, I think the city has given up that this is going to meet their needs of trying to get people out of the arena and out of our 8th Avenue building. Because I think initially, Alec, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were hoping to have this facility kind of be that next step and to get them out of there. And that's not what this is at any stretch. Otherwise, I think the Valley would not have been in favor of it. They're in favor of it being bridge housing and on a referral only, but not if it was an overnight stay, just an overnight in and out.
Which actually fits the skill set and the expertise of the Salvation Army better, because they've maintained transitional housing before, and versus just a walk-in shelter. Not that they haven't done that, but their skill sets more in the transitional 30, 60, 90 days, help you figure out how to take care of yourself and your family and balance your checkbook and manage money and all those other things. And you bring up a good point, Mary, that one of the things that the group had decided on, which I think was really a good idea, was instead of just, nothing against staff, either our staff or the city staff, but the folks that are actually going to manage this program, let them go out and be part of the determination of what facility works the best. Seeing how they're going to be in it for the long-term operating, let them be a part of it. So I thought that was a really good idea. As far as the funding goes, proposed budget is for the city of Spokane, $1.9 million of city community development block grant funds under consideration, which is still under consideration by the city. Spokane County and the Spokane Valley would combine our resources, $1.5 million from the Homeless Housing Assistance Act. Those funds were enacted, well, that's, as our folks at Community Services, they put in a narrative about how those funds came to us. The operating budget, again, where the funding comes in, the city of Spokane, $1.9 million over 5 years. Spokane County includes the Valley, $1.9 million over 5 years. And interesting enough, as Al knows, because we talked about it at the first meeting, a Vista Foundation partnership, $1.5 million over 5 years. That's the proposed funding source. The schedule, real quick, is project timeline. This month in June, which is running out, they need a location selected. They need to secure the capital and get their project charter authorized, and they need a draft operating pro forma. It's pretty aggressive. By June, through June and October, progressive build design on an RFP, construction, finalize your operating pro forma, and confirm your outcome metrics so we can make sure that the money's being spent in delivering the outcomes that we want. In November 2020, the intake requirements and capacity shifting for emergency shelters, and then open for the cold weather season. That's the aggressive timeline. So if you want to participate, the signatures on the project sponsor approval would be obviously all 3 of you commissioners, Mayor Woodward, Mayor Wick, Brian, and Letitia Hill for the Vista Foundation. So that's what we're up to.
So, and we did take this to the Valley City Council, and Nadine and I did a presentation to them, so that way they were aware of what's. We were trying to be as transparent as possible, and don't want to have happen what happened before with the grocery outlet. So we wanted to be aware. they were a little confused. Well, meeting speed was not well that night, so that was kind of tough. But
What was that? What was not well that night?
her feed, her Zoom
Oh,
was really
gotcha.
poor.
Okay.
So that didn't help with the people that don't hear very well. It was interesting. So anyway, so they were confused because they thought we put this, gave them the project charter. We gave them the 5-year plan from the continuum of care. Pam Teets explained the continuum of care. Arnie's been on it. Pam Haley is now on it for them. And that, we'd already committed this funding, earlier this year, when we have approved the 5-year plan and all that. So, so I finally have this, the Valley now knows that unless, that this was not something they had to vote on, that this is just Ben Wick and the administrator, signing this, that this is just a document so we stay in our lane and keep going forward. It's not a commitment to any of it other than, we're committed to looking at this project. And then on a funding side of it, that since we already have the funding kind of set aside for it, and that was already done, before this charter was put together, that it's really the only decision for the city council of the City of the Valley is if we go over, if it's over budget, which is again why we need to find out where the location is, how much it's really going to cost to ensure, what the price is, to know that our operating is right, all of those things. So that's why everything really hinges at this point on location, so then we can start to develop all the rest of the forecasts.
So it'd be interesting to find out what location they find and that they deem as the best candidate.
So when do they need us to sign on to the charter?
I would.
She'd probably like us to sign on now. I mean,
The proposed sponsor approval was dated the 17th of June originally. But the choices are, we could sign it now on our part. We could wait until we find out where the site was selected, because you're right, Mary, there's really nowhere for the project to go until they get a site selected.
I think we could sign a charter. I mean, the charter is just saying this is where we want to go, this is where we're headed.
Absolutely.
I think what I like about signing the charter now is saying this is what we anticipate for capital money and operating money, and don't exceed it. That's going to be my goal.
All right. Well, I don't have it. I don't have a copy of the charter that isn't a draft. If you guys want to sign it today, you can authorize your signature on it, and I'll get one and stamp it.
So is there no final draft out yet? Is this still in draft form?
Yep, the only one I have is a draft. I don't have.
Oh.
So this draft with the red, lines in it, that was Kathleen made sure she had the funding in appropriately for what Spokane County is committed to. So I'm very comfortable with the edits that Kathleen made.
They were all in red, and she just made sure that, as Mary says, it was very specific where the funding came from on the Homeless Housing Assistance Act.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, should we make sure that we're not signing this draft and everyone else is signing a different draft that has
we can hold off.
I just want to make sure we're all working off of the same, like the county is working off of the same thing the city is working off of, and that we actually have an agreement on what the final draft is. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So, but no, I think this is a great idea. I mean, we've allocated, it's the CDBG funds. I mean, everything you've explained on what they want to do, I think sounds great. And I'd love to get this stood up as quickly as possible.
I will attempt to get a clean draft that everybody agrees on. I'll get a hold of Arian later. John can bring it over sometime tomorrow at the 2 o'clock or whatever for your signatures, because I'll be off site, and away we'll go. And we'll make sure that has that language. Mary brought up a very good point. The only thing that was added, which is in red in my draft, that's why I'm going to have you sign it, is Kathleen wanted to make sure that everybody was sure where the funding came from. And that was a very good edit on her part, so.
Mhm.
We'll make sure that's included in the non-draft version.
And this will have to go, correct me if, is this correct? That this will have to go through that process where we deem if it's of regional significance and all that, and then through the zoning and whether it'll have to, right? With it,
I
this
don't
was the
believe-
discussion we had a couple weeks ago,
No,
correct?
it's not gonna go through the regional significance process.
Does not have to now. Okay. Okay. Cause I remember that was something that Al had raised the potential. And I remember the discussion was that could add, a lot of time to it. So that it's not going to happen now.
My understanding is John Peterson researched it and that wasn't the process they were gonna follow. Is that your understanding?
Okay.
That wasn't my understanding.
I might be mistaken.
I hadn't heard that if that was the case. So
I think that's why we want to figure out where the site really is to figure out what we need to do for the zoning.
Yeah, so what I remember John saying is it really depends upon what the underlying zoning is. Because if it was in multifamily, then it would be fine. If it was in commercial, then probably not. And stuff. So he couldn't make a definitive decision
Oh, you knew where it
without
was.
knowing where the site was.
Right.
okay.
Because part of that's right, I'm sorry, because part of that discussion that we had with the city was it actually theoretically could be easier for them to do a variance inside their borders than it would be for the valley to try to do a variance inside their borders.
Yeah.
So it all goes down to where's this thing supposed to be located?
Okay.
Because it looked like when you sent us the list of the locations, it looked like all of those were either commercial or I would assume light industrial.
Right.
Yeah.
The list of all of them.
Yeah, and I think they've added a few more since that list too, which I don't know where they were. But that's why we just really determined it's like, we need to figure out a site. That's the next thing we really got to do to know what then it's going to entail. Because if you're remodeling a building or building from scratch, if it's vacant land, all those things. I mean, so that's why we determined we really need to get a site, and that's the next step. Because you can't, saying we have this much money, I go back to the mental health stabilization center. It's like, initially we got 2.4 million to build it, not really knowing the site, and everything's changed. So I just want to make sure we have a site, and that's what we're going off of and going down that path.
So we'll tee this up for our next meeting. Hopefully by then we'll know more. Okay?
Yeah, we could tomorrow, have it for tomorrow. Yeah, because I think this is the version. And if we get a clean copy and sign it, then we know that's the copy that's going to go out to the cities of the valley. Because this version that they did look at, I know, was marked up.
I'm emailing Arian right now to send us over a clean copy.
Okay.
Okay.
She's traveling.
She'll check it.
All right. That then gets us to Mr. Sparber.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How you feeling, buddy?
I'm feeling good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm a little scared there. And let me just say
Scared the rest of us, thank you.
that test, yeah, you don't want to do that.
I got COVID.
Not so fun.
I was by you.
I had a bad case of the flu with a fever, so they ran me to the test. And they put, I guess, are you aware of the test? They put those, oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't want to do that again anyway, so. Not fun. I'm here.
I like the one where they do it when they actually can clean your ears at the same time.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that one.
As opposed to having your nose cleaned out.
Just that's very, very nice. All right.
So I'm here to talk about the U.S. Marshal Contract,
Okay.
not the DOC contract. So as you know, the U.S. Marshal Contract, we've been going back and forth with them on a per diem rate probably since the beginning of the year as well. Presently, they pay $83.95 for a per diem rate, and the transportation cost for any transportation that we have to do or supply an officer at $40 an hour. Through negotiation and the service of the Summerall folks, the consultants that we had working on the project, they secured basically two rates. And that's $122 for the per diem rate and a $45 transportation for 36 months, or $125 per diem rate per inmate, and $45 for the transportation for a 48-month. So what I'm here is to find out which is the preference of the board, and how would you like me to proceed on per diem rate? So basically, it's a 48-month for $125 per inmate, or it's a 36-month for $122 per inmate.
What would be your preference?
Would you like our recommendation?
Yes, what's your recommendation? And I'm sorry, I was listening to voice.
Can we exit the screen
Marshall?
share too? Thank you.
Is this with the U.S. Marshals?
Yes, U.S. Marshal Contract.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And so basically, I'm sorry, we were paying $83, so basically it's a $40 increase, $83.95 for their per diem rate. It's an increase of $122 for a 36-month, or an increase of $125 for a 48-month contract. And so what I want to know is which direction would you like to go for the contract? And then the transportation cost basically went up $5 per hour for the officer, $40 to $45 per hour.
So I guess my first question, other than your recommendation, I guess, but so we're not covering our costs.
No, we're still not recovering our cost.
We're just a lot closer.
We're just closer.
But Mike, had you also said that traditionally the healthcare costs for U.S. Marshals are much more favorable than the DOC inmates, that the U.S. Marshals tend to be much healthier?
Yeah, so the good thing about the DOC contract is if they need services off-site or the hospital guards, they take on all of that. They provide all of that. The only thing that we provide for their prisoners is anything that we provide for any other prisoners inside the facility.
Yeah, you mean Marshals, right? Not
Marshals,
DOC.
I'm sorry, did I say DOC?
Yeah.
I'm getting confused. I want them both settled. So yes, the Marshals. And so that's as opposed to the DOC, which we absorb all of those costs internally. And then we try to bill back out to any costs that we have for, like, you know, somebody going through the withdrawal program or one of those other type of things. So Marshals take that all on, and they take them to the hospital and do all of that.
So when Mike and I have been talking about this, that the recommendation is for the shorter term contract. A lot of things can change in 3 years. And I just, for the minimal amount of difference in the per day rate between 4 years and 3 years, I think that we would be, my recommendation would be that we go with the 36 months and then continue. This isn't the end of this effort, just like with DOC, whatever conclusions we come, these are ongoing discussions that we're going to have until we get to a point where we get a total cost recovery.
Absolutely. And then I would also recommend that we go to 36 months because it closely aligns to our union contracts. And then those rates go up or down or whatever we've got going on with the contracts as well.
So is it something that you put in the contract to state that this is, you know, not, I don't know, it's annoying to me that we continue to have contracts that we know are below our costs that we're having to subsidize.
So the U.S. Marshal contract is actually the person that's negotiating this is back east. It's set up on a federal schedule, and they go through a process where they review just, you know, stacks of paper that you provide for them to pour through. And I'm not saying that I couldn't have them add that in there, that it's not close to our actual cost and that we'd want to continue to negotiate that. Just knowing that when we get ready to do this, you know, maybe, you know, year 2.5, we start the process over again. that it's still going to be decided on the scale, federal scale that they use for housing prisoners. So I don't know that we'll ever get exactly recoup our costs, but my pledge is to continue to work on these every time they come up for negotiation, just to be right out in front of it and try to get closer to it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I definitely go for better than 4 years.
So, I know it's frustrating, you know. The DOC contract was a lot easier to work around because it was right here in our state, and I could, you know, negotiate it. But this actually involved a third-party SME to help us negotiate this, and it was very laborious. Margaret Smith did a tremendous job of helping us with it. It was a very laborious process, but I'm pretty happy with the amount that we gained so far, and we'll just keep plugging away at it.
Yeah, no, you did a great job to get us closer. So thank you versus the 83, which was kind of crazy. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, big increase. Good work.
So I'm hoping that I get a decision today on which way you'd like to go, so that I can respond back to them. 36.
Yeah, I'd go with the recommendation.
Okay.
You good, Al?
Yeah.
So
Okay, thank you.
that's a good thing about me. Okay, appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just on
Thank you.
Good to forget you too now.
my colleagues here.
Mr. Conley is here.
This is executive session.
I'm sure it is. I think this is a
Yeah.
real estate matter or legal
Okay.
action.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
You bet.
Thank you.
The yard's getting long, by the way, but my lawn's getting long.
Yeah.
So since this is at the end of our meeting, I know that Josh wanted to have an executive session. We have this one, so I'm going to just announce both of them at the same time. Or
Now we're better off separately going.
it just becomes a problem coming back on
Because of the way they Zoom.
because of the way the Zoom works, getting everybody back on, then getting back off, just to announce that we're going to go to executive session.
We can announce, like you said,
Yeah.
just maybe how long for each has to.
So how long do you think they're going to be?
It'll be pretty quick, 10, 15 minutes most.
So I'm going to say 10 minutes.
And Josh, for you, 10
Is that-
minutes?
Josh, your executive session was how long do you think?
Well, it depends how much conversation we want to have. I mean, it's a continuation of what we did previously. What do you think?
I'll say 20 minutes. If we end early, we end early. We're not going to do any more work. We're not going to take any action. We're not
Correct.
gonna take any action on yours. So we just end early. So I'm going to say 20 minutes to get to us 30-minute total.
Okay.
Okay.
Pending
So-
litigation.
So we're going to go into an executive session to discuss two items. First one is pending potential litigation. And for the first one, that will take approximately 10 minutes. And we have Mr. Mike Conley and Mr. Chad Coles joining the executive management team. No action will be taken as a result of that executive session. Then the second one will be just the three commissioners and our executive management team, I guess. And that's for the purposes of evaluating the performance of a public employee. And that executive session will be 20 minutes long. When we're completed with the second executive session, the board will then adjourn for this afternoon. So with that.
Al, before you do that, I think the second executive session, we just had the three commissioners and Jerry and legal, I think.
Okay, and for the second one, we'll just have Mr. Gimmel, Mr. Kaufman, and the three commissioners.
That could also be for potential litigation. The second one, I think.
Okay, the second one will be pending potential litigation and or reviewing the performance of public employee. All right, so go ahead and take us off.
You need to turn off the phone.